You're standing over a simple chip, soft grass, maybe 10 yards to the flag. You've hit this shot 1,000 times before, and your hands tighten up anyway. You already know why. Half the time you catch it heavy and it dribbles a few feet. The other half you catch it thin and send it screaming across the green. Same swing, two disasters. Here's what I found after years of this. 96% of golfers do one specific thing with their wedges that almost guarantees the chunk or the blade. And the worst part? They were taught to do it on purpose. I did it for 11 years myself. I leaned the shaft hard toward the target, chopped down on the ball, and hoped. I bought new wedges. I paid for lessons. Nothing stuck. Then I stumbled onto what Gene Sarazen did in 1932, right before he played the British Open. What he built into that club is the exact thing modern golfers have been trained to cancel out. And the fix cost you nothing. You do it with the same wedge sitting in your bag right now on your own lawn this weekend. So let me back up and show you the mistake first, because you can't fix what you can't see. Think about the last time you sculled a little pitch clean over the green. You didn't decide to hit it thin. Your body did it to protect you. See, the shot before that, you probably hit it fat. You buried the club in the turf and the ball went nowhere. Your brain hated that feeling. So on the very next swing, without asking you, it pulled up at the last second to avoid digging in again. That pull-up is the blade. Fat, then thin, then fat again. It feels random. It is not random. It's a loop. And there's a single cause underneath both halves of it. The cause is the leading edge of your wedge. That's the sharp front lip of the club, the part that faces the ball. When that lip is pointed down into the ground, it acts like a shovel. It digs. And almost everything you've ever been told about wedge play points that shovel straight into the dirt. I'm talking about the advice you've heard 100 times. Hit down on it. Lean the shaft toward the target. Get your hands ahead of the ball. Trap it against the ground. Every one of those cues does the same thing. It tips the sharp leading edge down and lifts the back of the club up in the air. You've turned your wedge into a chisel. And here's the cruel joke. When you do that and you catch it a hair heavy, the sharp edge stabs the turf and stops dead. Chunk. So next time you're scared, you flinch and lift. Blade. The advice that was supposed to give you crisp contact is the exact thing manufacturing the two shots you fear most. I want you to feel how backwards this is. You've been swinging harder and leaning that shaft further forward, thinking more of the correct move will finally fix it. But every extra degree of forward lean sharpens the shovel. You've been doubling down on the poison and wondering why you feel worse. I remember the exact evening I figured this out. I was on a chipping green just before dark, alone, and I'd shanked and chunked about 15 in a row. I got so frustrated, I basically gave up trying to hit down. I just sort of lazily slid the club under the ball, no hands forward, no chop, and it popped up soft and landed like a butterfly. I thought it was a fluke. It wasn't. I'd accidentally done the thing this whole video is about. But to understand why that worked, you have to meet the man who put the fix inside the club almost 100 years ago. His name was Gene Sarazen, and in the winter of 1932 he was obsessed with one problem: bunkers. Back then there was no such thing as a sand wedge. Players used a thin-bladed niblick, basically a sharp shovel, and getting out of sand was a nightmare, even for the best in the world. The club dug straight into the sand and buried. Sarazen had just taken up flying lessons, and the story he told for the rest of his life is that the answer came to him in an airplane. He noticed that when the pilot pulled back on the stick, the tail dropped and the nose rose and the plane climbed. He thought, what if I could make a club do that? What if the back of the sole, the trailing part, hung lower than the sharp front edge, so the club would ride up through the sand instead of stabbing down into it? So he went into a workshop and he soldered lead onto the back of the sole of a niblick. He added a wide flange that hung down below the leading edge. When he set that club on the ground, the sharp front lip actually sat up off the turf and the fat back rail carried the weight. He'd built a club that resisted digging. He'd built a club that wanted to bounce. That word matters, because that's literally what the feature is called today. Bounce. It's the angle between the leading edge and the lowest point of the sole. Sarazen invented it on a kitchen table experiment, took the club to the British Open at Prince's in 1932, and won. Then he won the US Open that same year. He kept the club a bit of a secret at first because he knew what he had. Now here's where it gets personal for you and me. Sarazen designed that club so the sharp edge stays off the ground and the wide sole thumps the turf and skids. The club was engineered to save you from digging, and then generations of instruction came along and taught us to lean the shaft forward and point that sharp edge back down into the dirt. We spent decades quietly undoing the single greatest short game invention of the 20th century. Ask yourself, who benefits from that? Because I did, and the answer made me a little angry. Think about it. If the fix is free, if it's already built into the club you own, nobody makes money. But if you believe your chunking is a swing flaw, then you need lessons. And you need a newer, better wedge every couple of seasons. And you need the same tour model the pros play. That's a business. And I fell for the whole thing. Here's the detail that finally opened my eyes. Go look at what the touring professionals actually use versus what gets sold to weekend players. A lot of tour players use very low bounce wedges, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, almost no forgiveness against digging. And the marketing whispers to you that if the best players use low bounce, you should too. So the shelves fill with sharp, low bounce, tour preferred wedges, and average golfers buy them by the thousands. But the pros can use that razor because they have a shallow brushing swing and they practice 5 hours a day on tight lies. You and I do not swing like that. Most amateurs come down steep. A steep, digging swing with a low bounce, sharp-edged wedge is the perfect machine for hitting it fat. They sold you the one club least able to protect you, and they sold it by dressing it up as the expert's choice. That's the villain here. Not one company. It's a whole system that profits when you believe the problem is you and the solution is another purchase. The solution was never another purchase. It was understanding what Sarazen built and then setting it up so it can actually work. So let me show you what more bounce actually does, in plain terms, because this is where it stops being a history lesson and starts saving you strokes. Picture the sole of your wedge as the bottom of a rocking chair. A club with real bounce has a rounded rail on the bottom, so when it meets the ground it slides and skids forward, like a stone skipping on water. A club with the sharp edge pointed down has no rocker. It's a knife, it sticks. When the club skids, it forgives you. Say you hit 2 inches behind the ball, which is a fat shot for most people. A club that skids will bounce off the turf and still slide up into the back of the ball. The result is a shot that comes out a little soft but still gets on the green. The same mistake with the sharp edge down would have buried and gone nowhere. Bounce turns your disaster into a playable shot. That's the whole point of it. Now, how do you get that skid instead of that stab? It's the opposite of what you were taught, and it's simple. First, stop shoving your hands so far ahead of the ball. When you set up to a normal chip, let the shaft sit close to straight up and down, or leaning only slightly forward, not jammed toward the target. That one change lets the back of the sole drop down where Sarazen wanted it, and it lifts that sharp front lip up off the ground. Second, quiet your wrists through the little shots. The scoop, the flip, the trying to lift it in the air move, all of that changes the loft at the last instant and brings the edge into play. Let the loft that's already built into the club do the lifting. It's a lot of loft. Trust it. Third, and this is the feeling that changed my game, let the sole thump the grass. I actually want to feel a soft thud as the wide part of the sole slaps the turf and slides. When I hear that little thump and skid, I know the bounce did its job. When I hear a sharp click or feel the club stop dead, I know I pointed the knife down again. When I first tried this, everything in me resisted. It felt like I was going to hit it fat on purpose. My brain screamed that I was going to bury it. But shot after shot, the ball popped up soft and rolled to the hole. The club was doing the work I'd been fighting for 11 years. I wasn't a better athlete that day. I just stopped canceling out the tool. But maybe you're sitting there thinking, this is fine for somebody who can go buy a new high bounce wedge and take a lesson to groove it. Maybe you're thinking, my wedges are 10 years old, I'm not spending $300, and I don't have a fancy practice facility. Good, because that's exactly the situation I was in, and this is the part I most want to hand you. That feeling of this is too easy is exactly what it should feel like, and if you want the full system laid out in one place, I put it all in writing. Everything in this video, plus the setups, the drills, and the adjustments for different lies and conditions, is broken down step by step in First Fix, Deep Fixes, and System Complete, 3 books I wrote specifically for golfers who are done being sold to and just want to understand what their equipment was already built to do. You'll find the links in the description below. If this channel's approach resonates with you, the books go a lot deeper and they cost far less than 1 bucket of range balls at a teaching facility. Now, let's get back to the mechanics, because there's one more free adjustment that surprised me most. You do not need to buy anything. The wedge in your bag already has bounce built into it. Every wedge made since Sarazen has some. The problem was never that your club lacked the feature. The problem is that your setup and your motion were canceling it out. So let's uncancel it at home with what you already own. Here's the first thing to do, and you can do it on your living room carpet tonight. Take your wedge and set it down flat on the floor the way you normally would at a dress. Now look at the front edge. I'll bet the toe is dug down and the leading edge is sitting flush against the floor. That's a digging setup. Now, without moving your hands forward, let the club settle so the middle of the sole rests on the floor and you can see just a sliver of daylight under that sharp front edge. Feel how different that is. That is the club sitting on its bounce. Do this 10 times until your hands remember the feeling. It costs nothing and it reteaches your setup in about 5 minutes. Next, go out to your backyard or honestly, even a strip of lawn. You do not need a ball for this one. Make slow half-length swings and let the sole of the wedge brush and thump the grass. Listen for it. You want a soft swish and a little skid, not a chop that tears a divot. If you're tearing chunks of grass out, your edge is still diving. Shallow it out until the club just kisses the turf and slides. 10 minutes of that trains the exact motion that saves you around the green. No range fees, no coach, just you and a patch of grass and a sound to chase. Now, if you want to feel bounce work in the most obvious way possible, do the drill I stole from an old bunker lesson. You don't even need sand. Find a bare patch of dirt or a spot of thin grass. Draw a line in the dirt with a T, or just pick a leaf on the ground. Your only job is to make the club slap the ground behind the line and slide through so it comes out in front of the line. Don't try to pick anything clean. Slap and skid. When you can make the club thump down and glide forward without sticking, you have felt bounce do its job, and your hands will never forget it. That single feeling is worth more than a bag full of new wedges. And here's a money point that matters if you're tired of being sold to. Before you ever spend $1 on a new wedge, go look at the wedge you already have and find the number stamped on it. Most wedges have the loft and the bounce printed right on the sole or the back. If you see a bounce number of 10, 12, 14, you already own a forgiving club and you've been playing it like a knife. If you see a 4 or a 6 and you tend to hit it fat, now you understand why and you know what to look for if you ever do replace it. Either way, you just saved yourself from buying blind. That knowledge is the thing they never wanted you to have, because informed golfers buy far less junk. Open the face. When you're around the green and you want the ball to sit down soft, take your normal grip, then rotate the club face open a touch before you settle your hands So the face points a little to the right of your target if you're a righty. You'd think that adds difficulty. It does the opposite. Opening the face exposes even more of that wide sole, which means even more bounce. You've just turned your everyday wedge into a higher bounce club for free, exactly the way Sarazen's flange was meant to be used. The pros who make those soft, checking little flop shots aren't doing it with special clubs. They're doing it by opening the face and letting the sole slide under the ball. You can do it today with the wedge you've had for a decade. So now you know the setup, the motion, and the free adjustments. But I promised you something specific, and this is the part I found buried that made all the rest finally click into place for me. I went looking through old golf instruction, the stuff from the era right after Sarazen, when the sand wedge was still new, and teachers were trying to explain this strange new club to ordinary players. And I found the way the old teachers described the correct feeling before the modern hit down and lean it forward advice took over and drowned it out. It's a phrase from that older school of teaching, and it is the exact opposite of everything you've been told. They said to play the shot as if you were trying to slide the sole of the club under the ball and toss a shallow slice of turf along with the ball forward toward the hole, not down, forward. You are not trying to strike the ball. You are trying to pass the wide sole through the grass underneath it and let the ball ride out on the loft. The ball is just along for the trip. The club works on the ground, and the ball leaves because the loft is there to send it. Read that again, because it undoes the whole modern trap. Hit down on it makes you attack the ball with the edge. Slide the sole under it and pass through makes you use the bounce exactly as it was engineered. Same swing length, same club, completely opposite result. The instant I stopped trying to hit the ball and started trying to slide the sole through the grass beneath it, the fat shots and the thin shots both disappeared in the same afternoon, because they were always the same mistake wearing two different masks. Here's how you groove it this weekend, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. Put a ball down on a decent lie. Pick a spot about an inch in front of the ball toward the target and make that spot your real target, not the ball. Your job is to make the sole of the club skid across the ground and finish at that forward spot. If you're sliding the sole toward that forward spot, you physically cannot chop straight down with the sharp edge. The geometry won't let you. The club has to shallow out and skid, and when it skids under the ball floats up soft and lands quiet every single time. You've replaced attack the ball with slide past a spot in front of it, and that one mental switch is the whole secret. Do that for 20 minutes. 20 balls, sliding the sole to the forward spot, listening for the thump and the skid. You will feel like you're cheating. You'll feel like you're barely doing anything and the ball keeps coming out perfect. That feeling of, this is too easy, is exactly what it should feel like. It felt hard for years because you were fighting the tool. It feels easy now because you finally let the tool do what a man built it to do in 1932. And let me connect the whole thread for you, because this is bigger than one golf shot. A player noticed a real problem. He built a genuine solution with his own hands, no committee, no marketing department, just lead solder and a good idea from an airplane. It worked so well he won 2 majors in 1 year with it. Then, slowly, over the decades, the simple truth of it got buried under advice that made you dependent on lessons and new gear. The knowledge didn't vanish. It just got quiet, kept alive in old books and by a few teachers who remembered, and now you're holding it. You know what the sharp edge does, you know what the bounce does, you know how to set up so the club protects you, and you know the one phrase that flips the whole thing right side up. The cost of not knowing this is bigger than you think. It's not just the chunk chip that turns a bogey into a double. It's the years of thinking you're just not talented enough for the short game. It's the money spent on wedge after wedge chasing a feel that setup was stealing from you. It's the quiet embarrassment over a 2-foot shot in front of your friends. All of it traces back to one sharp edge pointed the wrong way, and you can turn it around this weekend for free. I chased Chris Contact for over a decade the hard way, and it turned out the man who solved my problem did it before my father was born. That's the part that stays with me. The answer wasn't ahead of me in some new product. It was behind me in something somebody already figured out and almost everyone forgot. If you're the kind of person who's tired of being told the fix is always another purchase, who still believes a little understanding beats a lot of spending, then you already think the way this whole thing works. You didn't need a new wedge. You needed to know what your wedge was built to do. So here's what I want from you. Go find your wedge right now before you forget and read me the bounce number stamped on it. Is it a 4, a 10, a 14? Drop that number in the comments and tell me if you're a digger or a picker, because I read these and I'll tell you straight whether that club's been fighting you. Don't just watch this and nod. Type it out. That number tells the story of your last 3 seasons. And if part of you lit up hearing that the best fixes are old fixes hiding in plain sight, then stick with me, because that's the whole reason this channel exists. We dig up the practical knowledge that got quietly replaced by things you have to keep paying for, and we test it with our own hands before we hand it to you. Next time I'm going to show you the setup change that fixes the shank, and it has nothing to do with standing farther from the ball like everyone tells you. It's the opposite, and once you see it, you'll wonder how you ever missed it. Go slide that sole under the ball this weekend. You'll feel Sarazen's little invention finally working for you instead of against you. I'll pick right up where I stopped. Inside the practical wisdom circle, I walk you through the bounce first technique, shot by shot on your own lawn, the deeper version of this lesson. You can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself, not some robot. You'll belong with thousands of old ways folks like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, cancel anytime with one click. Come join me.